and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all the insipid and bombastic twits in the Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Wednesday. I have quite the show for you today, my friends. And just to kind of give you a roadmap of where the program is going to go today, at the top of the second hour, we're going to have an interview with an interview that is a little bit unusual for this program. We're going to be talking to candidate for Florida's U.S. House District 23, Joseph Kaufman. He is a counterterrorism expert. He knows a lot about Iran, and he might be able to have a conversation with us about some of the good parts about his governor and some of the not so good parts of our governor. Yeah, namely alligator Alcatraz and getting rid of DEI and actually being a conservative instead of just talking like one. Well, anyway, we'll do that at 9 o'clock. And then on tomorrow's edition of the program, we have an interview with U.S. Representative Harriet Hageman, our monthly chat with the good representative. So we'll do that on tomorrow's broadcast. Also, I know, lots of updates on the show. But after today's broadcast, shortly after today's broadcast, we'll have the Cowboy State Politics podcast, which you can find on any of your podcasting apps, iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them. So lots of stuff going on the program. But we begin this morning with what some analysts are calling the deep state's attempt to create a color revolution. Now, a color revolution is not all that different from any other revolution. You get people in the street, get them fired up, and you try to overthrow existing power structures. Where it gets the name color revolution is there's always a color, a literal color, associated with it. So in this case, a lot of protesters are on the streets, and they've got red and green flags. Whether it's the Iranian flag or the Mexican flag or whatever, but there is an attempt by the deep state to fire people up. It was just yesterday that some ICE agents were fired upon, and absolutely a felony. The people that were responsible for that absolutely need to go to jail. In fact, there was a report on Fox News I saw yesterday afternoon where the Department of Justice arrested 10 different Democrat protesters. And they ended up charging 12, but there was 10 of them got arrested for violent acts towards law enforcement officers. This is taking things to a whole new level, my friends. Our Constitution guarantees you the right to protest, to ask for a redress of grievances from your government. It's absolutely in the Constitution. The difference is the only right you really have is to peaceably protest. You don't have a right to break the law. You certainly don't have a right to attack law enforcement officers. But that's what's happening. Now, there's a piece in The Blaze, and it's entitled, "Deep Staters Threaten to Use Color Revolution Tactics Against the Trump Administration." And I quote, "Some of those who claim to have built democracies abroad apparently want to tear them down stateside. Despite delays in mass layoffs ordered by a Clinton judge, the Trump administration has already managed some significant house cleaning at the U.S. Department of State. I think it was just last week that all of the USAID cuts went into effect. Remember, we did several segments on the show about how distraught Barack Obama and Bill Clinton and Bono were about all the cuts to USAID. But that's part of the State Department. And what happened is they rolled that entire organization underneath the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Now, he, on his own, as the secretary, has, for instance, fired scores of contractors who supposedly worked abroad building up civil society and democratic practices. I'm sure that's really what they did, but that's just the official title. And shuttered the rebrand of both the censorious Global Engagement Center and the U.S. Agency for International Development. These actions, coupled with Rubio's plan to can thousands of State Department employees, have enraged all the right people, including the Democratic lawmakers in Congress who claimed in a June 27th letter that large-scale reductions in force of America's diplomatic workforce would, quote, leave the U.S. with limited tools to engage as a leader in the world stage during this critical juncture. All right, it's all bureaucratic, political nonsense. The truth is, our State Department became so bloated and unmanageable that there were many, many contractors that were being funded by your tax dollars, and nobody really had any oversight over them. There's a whole bunch of examples of where really they used U.S. tax dollars to fund all sorts of different programs that have nothing to do with fostering any sort of republic or democratic principles or anything like that. It was just a money train to get cash to their different pals. Well, Marco Rubio and Donald Trump are putting a stop to that. It appears that these changes have angered bad actors besides those in Congress, some of whom intend to respond with something more serious than sternly written letters. Quote, they've done a very foolish thing. A number of anonymous USAID and State Department officials recently told the All Britain Journalism Institute's publication Notice about their plans to undermine the Trump administration. While it largely sounds like a revival of the resistance that undermined the first Trump administration, this group of would-be saboteurs appears keen on using nation-destabilizing tactics practiced abroad on their own government. Now, this is extraordinarily dangerous. Normally, when protests happen in America, it's for a brief amount of time, and then everybody goes home because some of them actually have to go to work. A good example of this is the George Floyd riots and the BLM riots of a couple of years ago. Yes, they went a little bit crazy for a while, burned buildings, attacked officers, did all sorts of different nefarious things, but eventually they went home. And there wasn't an attempt to, at least overtly, there wasn't an attempt to overthrow the U.S. government. Well, not anymore. That's what some of these deep state, now former employees, are planning to do. So here's what the piece says. According to Notice, and this is that All Britain Journalism Institute group, some jilted establishmentarians who were previously, quote, stationed across the globe actively supporting opposition movements in autocratic nations. So, in other words, they're the folks that are trying to spark color revolutions in other countries, like Iran, are now building a network of federal workers who are, quote, willing to engage in even minor acts of rebellion in the office. Let's see here. You could probably characterize it as treason, and some conservative commentators have called it that. But think about this. If you're trying to foment a revolution against the U.S. government, that's absolutely treason. I mean, I don't know of any other way that you would describe it. But just take a step back and listen to what I'm describing. So you have now former State Department officials and former contractors who were engaged in, trying to undermine the autocratic regimes of other countries, have decided that they're going to take it upon themselves to engage in that same activity here, that they're going to try to foment a color revolution in the United States. It's absolutely terrifying. Now, color revolutions, such as the 2003 Rose Revolution in Georgia, the 2004 Orange Revolution in Ukraine, the 2005 Tulip Revolution in Kyrgyzstan, are political upheavals aimed at toppling supposedly illegitimate or abusive regimes and replacing them with supposedly liberal Democratic ones. Now, Blaze News previously highlighted that in many cases, color revolutions were afforded help and direction by state actors and or by non-governmental organizations. And so these are the type of activities that our CIA and clandestine actors within our State Department engage in. And when you have an autocratic leader like for example, Bashar al-Assad, he was toppled by a revolution. I think it was last year or the year before. But that's exactly what happened. You had a bunch of people rise up in the streets, and then the folks who were in charge, they're not able to contain the violence, and the regime topples. That's exactly what we're talking about here. The Washington Post's David Ignatius described such efforts plainly in a 1991 column about successful efforts undertaken at the time in Russia, noting that instead of engaging in Cold War-style covert operations, overt operatives have been doing in public what the CIA used to do in private, providing money and moral support to so-called pro-democracy groups, training resistance fighters, and working to subvert communist rule. Those now plotting against the American government were once paid by the federal government to push Latin American militants to overthrow supposed dictators and support such causes as African secessionist movements. They also apparently helped kick off an ultimately successful uprising in the Middle East. So we're not talking about your run-of-the-mill, wayward college student that gets out of class, or maybe doesn't even go to class, and protests in the college square. We're not talking about that at all. We're not talking about your local Democrat party that thinks that they can protest every other week and that it's actually going to make a difference. By the way, there's another protest that's scheduled for, I believe it's July 17th, and this one is called Good Trouble. I'm not even kidding. You can go look it up. But their protest is Good Trouble. We're not talking about those types of protesters. We're talking about people that openly foment violence, that it was their entire job to rile people up and to get them to act violently and force a reaction from the government. I mean, those are the types of folks that we're dealing with. And the Democrats, they don't really seem to mind all of this. And I've got, let's see here. I've got a piece somewhere in the stack of stuff. Apparently it's not on top. But anyway, some of the Democrats are absolutely in favor of this. That they are the ones that are saying, go ahead and go out in the streets and riot and try to spark, any sort of unrest that they possibly can.
They're named Joy Behar or...
No, you're exactly right. But it's those type of people, Ken, that try to rile people up. And all right, so Joy Behar and Whoopi Goldberg, I don't think that they're the real effective agitators, but it's that same type of attitude. Well, the attack on ICE officers the other day was a really good example. I mean, those protesters showed up with AR-15s, which, okay, so at some protests, there are many people that are on the right that do show up with AR-15s, but there's one teeny weensy little bit of difference. Usually, almost always with a protest from the right, those guns don't go off. With the case of the ICE officers, they absolutely did. Those 10 individuals that I referenced earlier are absolutely being charged with attempted murder of a law enforcement officer. So, I mean, this is a pretty serious thing, and it's here. And I don't think that I have ever seen a piece that openly says, well, people are plotting to take over the government. Oh, wait. No, that was January 6th. We were all told that that's exactly what was happening on Capitol Hill. The difference between that and what I'm talking about is these folks actually mean it. January 6th was not an insurrection. And if it was the most poorly managed, poorly funded, poorly organized, poorly executed insurrection in the history of the world. There is no comparison between what happened on January 6th and what I'm talking about with these color revolutions. These really are, agitators that try to provoke a response from the regime. So anyway, something to keep an absolute bead on it, and if I see anything else, I'll bring it up to you. Now, one of these people that is really trying to rile people up is the teachers union. I know this comes as a big giant surprise to you that unions would be involved in fomenting unrest, but the teachers union recently passed a resolution to call Trump a fascist and support student protests over ICE raids. The resolution, along with several others, were passed at the group's annual convention. And I quote, "The largest teachers union in the United States, the National Education Association, has demanded that $3,500 be set aside so that it can officially refer to President Donald Trump and his programs and actions as, quote, fascist." Members of the National Education Association during its annual convention adopted a resolution that would have the group put up the cash so that all official NEA materials would, quote, correctly characterize the agenda of the Trump administration as fascist, as if they're not already doing that now. But here's what I think is going on here. This is an attempt by the teachers union to create some sort of legal basis, even though it's not legal. I mean, the teachers union is a private organization, but to create some sort of official basis so that teachers can tell their students that the president of the United States is a fascist. And I mean, that is exactly what's going on. What's ironic is that they think it's only going to cost $3,500. Corey DeAngelis.
I don't think it means what you think it means.
Corey DeAngelis shared several of the resolutions that were adopted by the NEA, saying in a Monday post on X, "I just received a copy of the National Association's resolutions that they passed at their annual convention. They kept them all private this year." And if you just hold on just a second, I'll show you what that resolution looks like. Here you go. All right, take a look at it. And it says, quote, "I just received a copy of the NEA's resolutions that they passed at their annual convention." And you can see what it says. "NEA pledges to defend democracy against Trump's embrace of fascism by using the term fascism in all NEA materials to correctly characterize Donald Trump's programs and actions." So, I mean, these folks really aren't even playing around anymore. And it's, I mean, I guess maybe we could say that they're just putting their money where their mouth is. But just to round this out here, just below the heading, under the headline "Cost Implications," the union asserted that it would cost $3,500 for materials to be printed reflecting that change. Other resolutions that they passed was one, to oppose any move to eliminate the U.S. Department of Education as an illegal, undemocratic, and racist attempt to destroy public education and privatize it in the interests of billionaires. How now, Agent 29, you, my friend, are a legislator. Now, I know that there was a big effort in the last legislative session to at least give some form of school choice. Why indeed were you trying to help out billionaires in doing so?
I wasn't. I voted against it, remember?
Oh, that's right. You are one of the smart ones that voted against it.
No, I was helping to try to get it passed until they contaminated it.
Right, and it was the pre-K thing that really set you off. But I actually do have a question for you, Ken. You were in a lot of the committee meetings, granted, in appropriations, but I'm sure that you saw some of this. That advocates of public education, the agencies, it seemed to me that their only argument was that you're going to destroy education if we do any sort of school choice. Could you just characterize for me what some of those committee meetings were like? I mean, just explain it to me.
Yeah, I was busy trying to get a picture of the socks.
Grand Dragon Satan socks.
Yeah. It's not that different than any of the other agencies. They have been pretty well autonomous, being able to do whatever they want to do without much interference for so long. And now all of a sudden you have conservatives that are coming in and starting to say, wait a minute, and picking up a rock and looking into the rock and saying, what about this? What about this? What about this? And they do not like it. So it's tense. But that's exactly why we need the scrutiny. It's not unlike the feeling that you get when you walk into virtually any public meeting with a recording device and people start freaking out. What does the word public really mean? And are we here to actually have a debate, or are we here to just rubber stamp your policies?
Well, and this is a really unpopular opinion, at least with most of the folks in education. But we used to be able to say that if you wanted to get rich, you wouldn't become a teacher, because teachers definitely are not getting rich. Now, I think that to some degree now that's still true. I am one of those people that I don't think that teachers get paid what they're worth, in some places. In others, I would argue that they get paid way more than the average person in an equivalent private sector job.
I used an expression in a committee meeting that got some mixed reviews, but it was
What, you saying something that gets
Yeah, I
mixed
know.
reviews? I can hardly imagine it.
hard to believe, but I said those who can do, those who can't teach.
Woo!
Now, I told them, I said, I set this up, this is an old adage, but there actually is some truth in that. And I'll give a parallel example. I, in my trade, have to go to Home Depot, for example, often. And there's always some guy in there who's, yeah, I was a contractor for 35 years. I made $300,000 a year. I know what kind of fitting you're going to need.
Yeah.
If you could do that, you'd be doing that. And that is an unfortunate thing about the nature of teaching, especially things like CTE. Try to find somebody that's willing to go in there for what we're willing to pay to. I'd rather be out welding. I can make way more money. And so what I'm getting around to is the idea that people that actually do teach, that have a passion for it, I have the utmost respect for them. My wife was one, my mother was one, my aunt was one, my other aunt was one. It goes on and on and on. My dad taught most of his life. I have tremendous respect for people who are willing to do that and forego, they sacrifice in order to do that. And that's tremendous.
Now, the reason I brought that up is I don't think that in Wyoming we have an overabundance of activist teachers. Now, we do have a few. I mean, there have been a couple of examples of, and I think both of them were from Cheyenne, of teachers that, it was, I guess, released, leaked, however you want to put it, pictures of the inside of their classrooms. And there's pictures of Karl Marx and flags of Che on the wall. I mean, there were a couple of instances of that. Now, those folks, activists, but I don't think that they're representative of the majority of teachers in Wyoming. But the problem is that the Wyoming Education Association, which I don't care how many times the cow pie says that it's not a union, it absolutely is. They collect dues. They lobby on behalf of teachers. I mean, it's absolutely a union. Those folks are absolutely interested in getting more money and more members. And
Yeah, that's closely related to what I think the problem is in Wyoming public education. It's not the teachers.
No,
The
I don't think so
teachers
at all.
The teachers, for the most part, are just like you and me. They are conservative, a lot of them.
Not all of them. I've met some pretty liberal
there are
teachers.
examples, but as a whole, especially when you compare them to other states, we tend to be a little bit more conservative here, even though they've been through the schools of education and had the brainwashing stuff. The problem is that we have this system that, for one thing, denies God. You're not allowed to bring God into
that's a huge problem.
And as soon as you start doing that, so now you've handcuffed even the good people that really could do a great job teaching are handcuffed. They're handcuffed in what discipline they're able to offer and how they manage things over and over. And the system has gotten to the point where it is so difficult to actually get through and teach the way I think it should be taught, that if we pulled our kids out of public school back in the 80s.
Yeah. Well, and I've said for a really long time that I think the best thing that you could possibly do for your kids is to pull them out of public school, because I mean, a lot of it has really turned into indoctrination. You could pick up any history book, and maybe they don't even use books now. I don't know. See, that's how old I'm getting. I still think that maybe we should read books, but you could pick up probably any current history curriculum and find things in it that are just absolutely not true. And it's just me being me, but I see an agenda everywhere I look. And when it comes to teaching students that, things that aren't true, that's absolutely an agenda. When we come back from the break, we're going to talk about more of these ICE raids. I think it's a big problem. So we're going to go to some of the news about the shooter next. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble, pretty much everywhere. It's almost like I'm omnipresent, which, let's be honest, way, way more popular than some of the other programs that you might listen to. And, even if we're not, we do a much better job than them anyway. Well, as I mentioned before the break, we got to talk about some of what's going on with, these ICE agents. What's going on? What are you doing?
I'm bored with ICE.
No. Hey, this is my program.
I know I'm not supposed to be bored, and this is your program, but I just kind of felt like maybe do something a little off the wall.
Okay, fine. It's like
that?
you have your fingers on the button, so it's not like I can do anything about
it. So.
What was that?
That's Bullwinkle.
That's Bullwinkle. Okay.
No, but I got a couple more of these sound bites. I think we'll call this segment Off the Wall.
Okay, off the wall it is.
So what I'm going to do is bounce a couple of sound bites which David has not heard, and just get his reaction. And trust me, David, I'm doing this for your own good. I think I'm sensing this morning that you just need a little bit of letting the brain catch up with where you're at.
Well, thanks. So you're saying I'm slow this morning?
I didn't say that.
All right, go ahead, hit play.
Okay, this is called Lefty Dad.
The Democrat dads out there. Your 14-year-old daughter comes home from school and tells you that she felt horribly uncomfortable because a fully intact 16-year-old boy got undressed in front of her, maintaining eye contact with her the entire time in the girls' locker room. What do you do as a father? Do you just look at her and say, well, sweetheart, you should stop being such a bigot? I'm starting to think you do. Which tells me you're not a dad. She clearly has two crappy moms, right? Because there's no way a father should look at something like that and not just have something well up inside them that wants to go out and protect and defend. But it's been neutered out of the progressive left.
Well, he's exactly right. That I question often whether there are any real men in the Democrat Party. I mean, certainly folks that are in favor of allowing men to go into women's restrooms and into women's locker rooms and undress. I mean, they're not men. They're not defending their daughter or their wife. And here's another thing. I just finished telling you that the best possible thing that you could do for your kids is to pull them out of public school. Because if you don't, this is the sort of stuff that they're going to be subjected to. The state of Wyoming just passed a law last session that said you had to use the, and Ken, you can correct me with the language of it, but basically it said you have to use the right bathroom. If you're a man, you go to the men's room. If you're a woman, you go to the ladies' room.
Yeah, and it depends on how you were born.
Yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with the birth certificate, Julie Jarvis. The reason I bring that up is Jarvis attempted to change the bill so that it referred to the gender that is on your birth certificate. Well, as we all know, people can change their birth certificate, so that was stupid anyway. But back on point here. If you're the dad that has a daughter that is being subjected to this, you need to put a stop to it. Now, I don't mean charge into the PE class and grab the PE teacher, though I'm sure that would be, in your mind. What I am saying, though, is one, you need to protect your daughter and get her the heck out of there. Two, then you go to the school board and you do things the right way. And, you can be the dad that you should be in the school board meeting and tell them this is not happening anymore. Because, that's what we have to do, ladies and gentlemen. We have got to stand up for our families.
Yeah, you'll probably get kicked out.
Hey, that's all right. You may get arrested. Okay, fine. Lots of people who have done the right thing have had the bracelet slapped on them. Don't be afraid of that. Do the right thing, which means do it legally, do it the right way, protect your family.
So I got another one here. There are three today, and the last one will lead us back into ICE, which is the topic that you're so anxious to get to.
I am, man. It's a lot of stuff going on there.
There is, but we have to kind of stop and smell the roses now and then.
Fair enough.
And this is a rose here. This is a rose among thorns. The guy's name is Damon Imani.
Okay.
And he is pretending to be a Department of Justice spokesperson talking about Jeffrey Epstein case.
Oh, okay.
And so you kind of have to listen carefully. And if you were able to see the video, you would notice that he's reading what he's supposed to read, and then he stops and thinks out loud or asks a question to somebody backstage. He has a Mr. Producer, too. So I hope you enjoy Damon Imani.
All right.
We want to clarify our new internal memo regarding Jeffrey Epstein, and we hope it addresses all your questions. First, as you may have seen in our newly released 10 hours long video clip of Jeffrey Epstein's prison cell, there is absolutely no proof that Jeffrey Epstein was murdered. Well, the proof could be in that 60 seconds that's missing from the video. I'm just saying, we have 10 hours long video and 60 seconds of it is missing. You could definitely break a neck in 60 seconds, no? Okay. Jeffrey Epstein did not keep a list of his clients. So he trafficked to powerful people, but he didn't keep a list. I would keep a list if I did that. Oh, so he didn't traffic. Okay, let's mention that then. All right. The powerful figures who currently maintain the videos of Jeffrey Epstein's clients who were powerful figures have informed us that we don't have any credible evidence that Jeffrey Epstein used his sex trafficking ring to blackmail powerful figures. Are you serious? How can I not question that? I love my life. No, I'm not suicidal. Why? All right. The Department of Justice and the FBI will assure you that we will continue to release everything we know about Jeffrey Epstein and his sex trafficking ring that we're permitted to. Okay, that's enough.
All right. So obviously, he's making fun of the whole situation, but I think that there's a couple of larger points here. First, Americans deserve to know the truth. However, if it matters, if the truth matters, then we should be able to know what happened. There was a very high-profile case. We know that a number of really high-profile people were involved, and and maybe they didn't attend the child sex ring island, but they certainly rode on the guy's jet. Which I think we need to know who those people were. We were told from the very beginning by Pam Bondi that there's a list, that it was sitting on her desk and that they were going to release it. And now all of a sudden, well, that list doesn't exist. What list? Obviously Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. Well, as you heard in the soundbite, well, there's 60 seconds of the video missing. What are we supposed to assume? If there is a portion of a video that's missing, that it skips, the only thing that you could possibly assume out of that is, well, there was something incriminating on it, so they had to delete it. All right. The guy allegedly whacked himself in the jail cell. So the only logical assumption is he had a little help killing himself. I mean, that's how. What else are we to take from that?
Even if it's not your assumption, it's a little bit like the situation in Powell a while back. Why don't you just avoid the questions and lay everything on the table?
Yes.
Show the whole thing. I saw a video last night, another spoof video. It said, "We found the 60 seconds. We found the 60 seconds." And Hillary's walking down the hall and walks into the room. Cuts
there
back
it
out.
is.
But anyway, we need to get back toward ICE. And in order to do that, this is a soundbite from Sheriff Mack.
Hold on, before we go there, I just got one more thought about this whole.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, that's what you're doing here, Mr. Producer.
I did.
Anyway, as it relates to Pam Bondi, what we heard at the beginning of the Trump administration is that we are going to release the Epstein files, and then there was a neutered release of the Epstein files, and it wasn't all it was cracked up to be. And then Pam Bondi told us, well, it's the files were redacted. They're sitting on my desk. They're ready to release. Okay, so if you are the Attorney General and you're the head of the U.S. Department of Justice and you say it's sitting on my desk, all I've got to do is release it, then we have to assume that that's the truth. Now, she went back on it and said, well, no, there is no list. We don't know what happened to it, but there is no list. Which is it? I mean, it's like being pregnant. You either are or you aren't. You can't be kind of pregnant, and you can't kind of have a list. I mean, either you do or you don't. And this is an example of where the cover-up is kind of worse than the crime. Now, let me talk about that just for a minute. What Jeffrey Epstein was horrific. I mean, there is no better way that you could describe it. It was absolutely horrible. He destroyed the lives of many, many, many young people. Absolutely horrible. The cover-up that I'm talking about is the list itself, not being released. Oh, we have it, we don't have it. And now, all of a sudden, I don't know what you're talking about. He totally killed himself. Okay, so that little situation, if it were to have happened in a vacuum, if there was a piece of evidence that came up missing, nobody knows what happened to it, we might be able to, the administration may be able to get past that. But it is the cover-up that is worse than the crime here, that the Attorney General said one thing, and now she's saying something else entirely. Now, I don't know that I am one of those folks that's on the Pam Bondi should resign train. I don't think that we should go that far. However, she needs to be held to account. We need to know exactly what happened there. They promised that this is going to be a super transparent administration. And so far, this is not a very good start. So we got to see the files. We got to know what happened, and they need to be transparent about it. And they're not. And if they're not willing to do that, then yes, Pam Bondi needs to step aside and get the heck out.
Yeah, or whoever is pulling Pam Bondi's strings.
Whomever.
It is something, and we as journalists, we as people who watch the news, we need to be fair and even-handed. If this had happened on the other side, we'd probably be a little bit outraged, and so we need to share that here.
Let me give you another completely unrelated example. So last Wednesday, I broke a story on Cowboy state politics where Senator Bo Biteman goes to Florida. He tells all of his insider pals, yeah, we want nuclear waste in Wyoming. And I don't know a single person that thinks that that's a good... Well, that's not true. I do know one person that did tell me if the conditions were right, he might be okay with it. But I don't know of any other legislators that have said, yes, let's create a nuclear waste dump. I think that would be a political loser. I think if you want to get kicked out of office, that's a pretty good way to do it. So anyway, Bo Biteman goes to Florida and he tells all of his insider groupies, this is, we want nuclear waste. But he goes farther than that. He says the people that are opposing it, well, they're just the members of the public and they don't know anything. I mean, and it gets worse. But go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, it just reminds me a little bit of Mark Gordon as governor. He goes out and says, we're going to make Wyoming the first zero.
Net negative.
Zero, yeah, or net negative.
Whatever that is.
it's funny. It goes out like it's a settled, a done deal, and we don't even know what he's talking about. Where did this come from?
Exactly. Well, here's the rest of what I was about to say. So sources have told Cowboy state politics, and anytime you hear me use that phrase, what I mean is I can't tell you who told me this, because if I do, they'll never talk to me again. But sources have told Cowboy state politics that after that story broke, and how dumb are you to think that what you say as a sitting Wyoming president of the Senate, that what you say isn't going to be recorded? I mean, you're either a moron or you're completely oblivious to what the real world is. But anyway, that Bo Beitman was pretty irritated that he got thrown, quote, thrown under the bus. Well, excuse me, Senator, you threw Wyoming citizens under the bus by saying something that wasn't true. And so, that situation had Bo Beitman come out and said, you know what, I'm actually kind of in favor of this. Let me try to make the argument to you. That would have been totally different. But instead, he goes behind everybody's back and does what he wants anyway. And frankly, I think that he lied a lot along the way. But it's just another example of, now it's a big, huge story, and I've got him red-handed lying about Wyoming citizens. It's the cover-up is always worse than the crime, always. Yeah, for now.
Okay, you're through.
No, maybe. I don't know. It's my show. I may never be through.
It is, and I hate it when I accidentally interrupt you, because I don't mean to do that.
That's okay. Well, sometimes you do,
Sometimes I do. So we're going to kind of swerve back toward ICE. And this is comments by Sheriff Mack.
Okay.
For those who may not be aware, he is kind of the quintessential constitutional sheriff.
I like him already.
Yes, he is. Well, here he is.
Know that all of these illegals, we've had Chinese come through, Iranians have come through, and now after we've bombed Iran, you're talking with these sheriffs. Are they nervous about these sleeper cells? I mean, I'm very concerned about it, Sheriff.
Yes, they are. And I've had two other sheriffs contact me and said they went to training within the last 6, 7, 8 months. One of them was trained in Israel. And they've said that they're absolutely, it's not going to be a violent attack. It's going to be an attack on our grid, on our electrical and our computers. And not only that, the water supply. And we need to start looking, we need to start asking our state governments, are we protecting our power sources and our water supply? Are those protected? Drive by any electrical company. It's usually on some main road right off the freeway. Is there security at those places? And what I've seen lately, I just drove back from California. I saw 2 of them. They had no security on them whatsoever. Folks, this is where we come in. We go to the sheriff. You go to the sheriff and say, what can you do to work with the state to make sure that our electrical system is protected? What are you doing to make sure that our water supply is protected? Folks, we've got to be involved in that. We are the eyes and ears of the community.
I think this is a perfect example of how we Americans have become pretty complacent with where we're at. That, it's been so long since we've had any sort of attack on our country here at home. I mean, September 11th was a really good example of that. I mean, how shocked were we that somebody dared to do that to us? And, we should have learned from that. We should be protecting these resources. But my guess is most communities aren't. I know if you go to the power station in Sheridan or Buffalo, the one in Buffalo is never guarded. It's right beside the highway, and maybe the gate's locked, but that's about it. But there's a lot of different resources, critical infrastructure that is completely unguarded and that is very, very vulnerable. But Sheriff Mack is absolutely right. I mean, if I were a terrorist, yeah, I'd totally hit the power grid as hard as I can, or the water supply. Now, I don't know of what you would introduce into the water supply, but I don't think that it would be that complicated. It wasn't that long ago that, what was it, in Michigan? There was a Chinese researcher that she was arrested with a engineered water contagion that she was going to introduced into the water supply. So I think that this is absolutely where any sort of terrorist or malfactor would absolutely hit. I mean, I think he's exactly on the nose. So, I mean, the question is, what are we doing here in Wyoming to protect our infrastructure? I mean, are we paying attention to things like the power substation or the water treatment plant or things like that? What are we doing down in Cheyenne? I mean, what protections are there? And I'm kind of hesitant to say this, but I don't really think that there's a whole bunch of protection going on. So, I mean, it's scary stuff there for sure.
We've just gotten soft. We've let our guard down.
Yeah.
We've had it so good for so long that we do need to start waking up. We need to pay attention. We need to look around and look at the vulnerabilities and begin to become more prepared.
Well, and then I guess the next question is, how do we go about doing that, right? I'm like, what are the necessary pieces and parts of that to take care of that critical infrastructure? Is it just something as simple as posting a couple security guards, or do we have to go further than that?
Yeah, well, it's going to vary on obviously the situation and the place. But one of the first things that needs to happen is the public needs to become aware of, where does my water come from? Where does my electricity come from? Where are the vulnerabilities? We don't even know in many cases where these things come from. Sheridan's water was threatened last year by a forest fire.
Yeah.
But it's just right out there where anybody could get up to it. You
Yeah.
could go to Twin Lakes, you could go wherever and begin to wreak some havoc.
Well, fortunately for us, the guy we're going to talk to at 9 o'clock, he's a counterterrorism expert. So I'm sure we could get him to opine for quite a while on this subject. But I've got it written down. We'll go ahead and ask him about that. And so make sure you stay tuned. At 9 o'clock, we're going to talk to Joe Kaufman. He's a candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives out of Florida. They're House District number 23, I believe. So we're going to talk to him at the top of the program. But let me just give you one piece here. Then we'll go to the break, and then we'll talk to Mr. Kaufman. So this is from the Federalist, and it's entitled "Shooter Attacked Border Agents Hours After the Dems Said Their Voters, quote, want blood." Okay, now just listen to that headline. Let me just read it to you one more time. Shooter attacked border agents hours after Democrats said their voters want blood. Now, I want you to, it's a shocking headline, but I want you to try to keep it in perspective, because this is the same thing that they accuse Republicans of all the time. Oh, you guys and your violent rhetoric. Sarah Palin and your targeting of congressional districts, you're the one that caused the Gabby Gifford situation. Now, you remember that? Okay, so this is kind of the same thing. I just want you to keep it in perspective. But just listen to what they actually did. In a Monday article published by Axios, Democrat leaders told the outlet their supporters want more from them, including blood, to fight against Trump's illegal immigration efforts. That same day, a man with a rifle and tactical gear shot at Border Patrol agents and local law enforcement in McAllen, Texas, resulting in the police officer being injured and the shooter being killed. And that's according to Fox News. Quote, "Our own base is telling us that what we're doing is not good enough, that there needs to be blood to grab the attention of the press and the public," one anonymous House Democrat told Axios. Now, again, question the source. Axios is not exactly the reputable news outlet that some of these others we talk about on the program are. They are entirely left-leaning, and in some cases, they kind of fit into the National Enquirer mold that a lot of what they say you kind of take with a grain of salt, but sometimes they hit one on the head. So this may be one of those times. Now, the congressman said that the grassroots supporters are telling lawmakers that when they enter ICE facilities that they need to be willing to get shot. So you need to entice security guards to shoot you. Now, this, just a couple of thoughts here. First, this is how little regard Democrats have for human life, that they're telling their protesters, their own people, hey, go out there and have a Border Patrol agent shoot you. That way we can use it for political purposes, and we can say, look at those evil ICE agents, they shot a protester. That's exactly what that's about. Now, Axios went on to say that more than 24 Democrat representatives who spoke to the publication are seeing more anger from constituents over the Democrats, quote, not doing enough to counter President Trump's agenda. It has even, quote, morphed into a disregard for American institutions, political traditions, and even the rule of law, according to Axios. Now, what have I seen in regard to this? That we get ourselves arrested intentionally or allow ourselves to be victims of violence. And a lot of times that's coming from economically very secure white people, according to a House Democrat who talked to Axios. So the Democrats, or at least some radical portions of the Democrat Party, are insisting that there's violence. And, remember, it is always Republicans that are said, you are the violent ones. You're the ones that are inciting insurrections on the steps of the Capitol. But really, when it comes down to it, there really are political radicals. I mean, in both parties, but they seem to gravitate more towards the Democrats. There's Antifa. There's all of the Palestinian protesters, the folks that are waving around an Iranian flag now. There really are some radicals. So it's not that big of a jump to say that some of these radical groups, and I hesitate to use the term grassroots, but that's kind of what they are. But some of these radical groups really are pushing for political violence so that it can be used for political purposes. So it's a pretty dangerous thing, and it's scary that you have people in America that really are trying to spark violence. So one more guy that might be stirring this whole thing up is New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani. He screamed as he tried to rush at a border czar, Tom Homan, and forcing the security to hold him back. Now, I actually have a video of Tom Homan kind of responding to this whole thing. Let me see if I can pull it up. But just imagine, if you were in the Tom Homan's position, like how would you handle this sort of thing? I mean, you're the top guy, and your people are getting arrested. Well, I guess it's audio, so we'll go ahead and listen to it. So here we go. Take a listen to this.
Who were these suspects who actually fired the shots and were later arrested? Who were they, Tom?
Look, they're your typical protesters that go from protesters to criminals. The attack on ICE officers, you've covered it many times, is up nearly 700% now. We were talking 500% a couple weeks ago, so it continues. The rhetoric against the men and women of ICE is skyrocketing, especially by members of Congress. We have senators, we have Congress people that compare ICE to the Nazis, compare ICE to racists, and it just continues. So the public thinks, well, if a member of Congress can attack ICE, why can't we? So the rhetoric has to stop. Or it's a matter of time for someone to, one of the ICE officers goes down or a criminal goes down. But we already see an officer go down.
To be clear, so these were American citizens? These weren't illegals who opened fire?
No. As far as the investigation, I want to get ahead of the local investigation on this, but they appear to be agitators, people that are protesting ICE operations, damaging ICE property, want to attack ICE officers.
See, there you go. So it's U.S. citizens, agitators, as Tom Homan calls them, and they really are trying to get violence started because the left firmly believes in the strategy of, and let's see, yeah, I've got enough time to talk about this. So it's Frances Fox Piven, bottom up, top down, and inside out. And Frances Fox Piven, she had a political theory that the way that you radically change America and to create a socialist state was to collapse the system. And in her writing, she was focusing on on Medicare, healthcare, welfare, those sorts of things. And her idea was you get so many people on the program that the program collapses in and amongst itself. And since you have so many people involved, those folks will rise up, and then what you'll have to do is use law enforcement to control them. So bottom up, top down, inside out. And when the top comes down, when law enforcement cracks down on these agitators, it just further it makes the violence, that whatever violence had been happening at the time, it just makes it explode. So you do have political actors like Tom Homan was talking about that really do want to spark political violence. And I think that the shooting of the ICE officer, I think it's just one example of that. And I mean, it's terrifying that in America, these sorts of things generally don't happen. But the more desperate that people become, the more the more risks they're willing to take. Now, it used to be that the Democrats wouldn't actually, some of them wouldn't actually want real violence, but we're way beyond that because they know that that's the only option they have left. They've lost the Senate, they've lost the House, they've lost the presidency, and so they don't even really have any ability whatsoever to effect any sort of change. And it's a really scary time, and I think it ties into what you were talking about, Agent 29, that we need to be on our guard around critical infrastructure. We need to be watching these folks because some of them, they really do want violence. Well, let's see. We're close enough to the top of the hour, so let's go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk to Joe Kaufman, and he's running for Florida House District 23 in the U.S. House of Representatives. We'll talk to him coming up next.
Ever since gold backing was removed from the dollar, the value has dropped significantly over the past few decades. Experts say this is one of the main reasons goods are more expensive and your savings are worth less each year. How would you know how many dollars to save for retirement if the valuation of the dollar changes over time? Would you work all week for that $20 gold piece? Let's look at the valuation of this coin from the 1970s to today. When President Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971, this coin traded for about $275. Today, it trades for about $14,000. Buying and holding rare coins using only a fraction of your portfolio is our suggested way to save for the future. Call U.S. Coin Capital at 1-800-878-2646 to get your free United States Gold and Silver Buyer's Guide.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Welcome to Lessons in Civility by Morton Buildings. Gentlemen, is your garage completely jam-packed full of all of your unnecessary crap, and your lovely wife has been on your tail, nagging you non-stop to clean it out? It's not because she just wants to incessantly irritate you. Chivalry dictates that you should clear out a space so she can park her car inside and you don't end up sleeping on the couch anymore. To do that, contact Nick and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Not only are they the experts in metal building construction, they're also skilled at keeping you out of the doghouse. One more time. Their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out at their website, mortonbuildings.com. This has been Lessons in Civility from Morton Buildings. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble. Documented to be almost always right. 99% of the time. And as always, the views expressed by the host of this program may not necessarily be those of the producer, though they absolutely should be. And they should be yours too. Well, I don't know. I don't know if I'd go that far. But the whole point of the program is to kind of educate you, try to let you know what's going on and fill you in on the news that you may not have heard elsewhere. Now, before the break, we were talking about this assault on ICE officers that happened down in Texas. And the radical left is becoming more and more gutsy, I guess, is a way to put it. More and more desperate. That's a better way to put it. That they know that they don't really have any more power, that they don't really have any other avenues but to disrupt anything that they possibly can from the Trump administration. Now, they've investigated this guy for a decade. And I don't think that there's any other person on the face of the globe that is more squeaky clean. And this is kind of ironic, right? Like when you say the term squeaky clean, you really don't think of Donald Trump, right? Because, I mean, we kind of hired sort of a scoundrel. And I mean, I don't think that he's really, hurt people, but he's a capitalist business person. He's brash. He's very, very real. And, I mean, that's the guy that we hired. And so we do want somebody that's very transparent and very real. And, when you have the bully pulpit saying, no, you're a radical leftist, well, apparently the left doesn't like it that much.
You say that it's real, but I'm sorry, that orange tint.
I mean, he does have an orange little color to him. That's for sure. I mean, but, orange man bad. If we didn't have the orange tint, we wouldn't have the phrase orange man bad. Well, it's, I think that we're living in a pretty dangerous time, a pretty unpredictable time, for sure, that, you really don't know what the left is going to do. And like we talked about in, the previous segment or before the break, we've become kind of complacent when it comes to protecting our infrastructure and, protecting those things that we got to have, our water supply, our power grid, those sorts of things. And we're just not paying attention, I don't think. Well, at least we're not paying attention to the degree that we need to be.
I think we need to give that same diligence to the schools.
No, absolutely.
There are a lot of things that you talk about complacency, and many people have asked me, what's the biggest problem in Wyoming? And it's just apathy. And maybe apathy is not the perfect word, but it's complacency. We've gotten very comfortable for very long. We haven't had to be worried about a lot of these things. And, like the proverbial frog in the water that gets warmed up, by the time you become aware, it's probably too late.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so just to give you an update, Mr. Kaufman is evidently having a little bit of trouble finding the meeting or getting connected to it. So I'll keep the meeting open. We'll continue with the program, and if he happens to be able to get connected, we'll go to him. But for right now, let's just continue with the program, as it were. Now there's another piece from The Blaze, and it just it's amazing that sometimes when you're doing show prep, one news outlet will just have a whole slew of articles, and it's and some days you may get one, you may get none out of them, but today it's The Blaze. This one's entitled, "Liberal Women Quickly Learn What Happens When You Say Vile Things About Little Girls Killed in Floods." And if you're not familiar with what I'm referring to here, there were a couple of activists that they really, really, really went out on a limb and tried to blame people getting hurt in these floods because they were conservative, because they were white. Let me just read a little bit of this piece to you. And I quote, "The deadly flash floods in Texas brought out the best in heroes such as Dick Eastland, the co-owner of Camp Mystic, who died trying to save campers from the rising waters. 27-year-old Julian Ryan, who perished trying to save his mother, his wife, and his two boys. And there were others that they tried to paint those efforts as just absolutely the only reason that those people were harmed is that they were white and that they were conservative. And Mr. Kaufman just got connected to the program, so here in just a minute we're going to go to him and we'll pick this story up on the other side. But I mean, this is an example of going straight to politics when something bad happens. And you see Democrats do this all the time. Joe Biden anytime there was a school shooting, that guy went directly to, well, let's have gun control. Well, that's what the liberals are doing here, is that they're going straight to, hey, all of these camps, well, most of the people that attended them were white. And so obviously that's why. They tried to blame it on Donald Trump, which I don't know how you blame a flash flood on the president of the United States, but some of the Democrats tried. Let me just give you another part of this here. So this natural disaster, quoting now, also brought out the worst in a pair of liberal women who evidently couldn't resist the urge to put a political spin on the deaths of American children. Both Christina Probst, a Houston-based pediatrician, and Sade Perkins, a race-obsessive Democrat appointee to Houston's Food Insecurity Board, found out the hard way that Texans have a low tolerance for vile remarks about bereaved families, particularly those who just lost children in a horrific flood. Perkins is a community organizer from Houston's 5th Ward who apparently owns Freedman's Town Markets and was involved with the Princeton University Black-Centric Crossroads Project. According to the Houston mayor's office, the Democrat mayor appointed Perkins to the city board, and she's still on there. So Perkins complained in a TikTok video that the victims of the flooding at Camp Mystic, the Christian camp in Hunt that Republican Governor Greg Abbott said was horrendously ravaged in ways unlike I've seen in any natural disaster, were receiving an undue amount of attention on account of the campers' supposed immutable characteristics and insinuated that the parents of the dead missing girls were racists. I mean, this is politics at its worst. You have a horrible tragedy, and, the media, Democrat actors on the left, the first place they go to is to say that, well, you're racist anyway, so your kids deserve to be killed. I mean, it's absolutely horrible. And that's what these folks did. And another one said, quote, I know I'm probably going to get canceled for this, but Camp Mystic is a white-only girls' Christian camp, lied Perkins. They don't even have a token Asian. They don't even have a token black person. It's an all-white, white-only conservative Christian camp. And so, obviously, they deserve to be flooded. I mean, the levels to which the left will go are absolutely despicable. She went on. If you ain't white, you ain't right. You ain't getting in. You ain't going, period, added the Democrat appointee. Now, I think that context needs to be said, continued Perkins. If this were a group of Hispanic girls out there, they would not be getting this type of coverage that they're getting. No one would give an F about all these white people. I mean, I don't even want to read any more of this. But is this where our politics are going? I mean, really, are we the people that are that are going places, going to this place, that we're saying that it's racism is our first alternative when we talk about a tragedy? I mean, it's absolutely outrageous. And I mean, I don't even honestly, Ken. I mean, I don't know where else we go here, except to say that it's wrong. And I mean, what do you do with that, really? Just absolutely amazing. Well, here's another piece. This one's also from The Blaze. It's kind of funny. Brian Stelter suggests that the media are partly to blame for warning fatigue after the tragic flood deaths. All right, so this one is, and we kind of covered this story a little bit yesterday on the program, but there were a lot of reports saying that the early warning system, the National Weather Service, and the agencies in Texas didn't adequately warn people. Well, that's not entirely true. Here's a piece from Catherine Levitt when she was talking to reporters, and she completely said, well, none of that stuff is really true. Take a listen to this. Throw it up there. Maybe. There we go.
Happened under Musk while he was advising DOGE, including the National Weather Service?
I think I've already addressed that, Kristen, and what I can tell you is that these offices were fully staffed The San Angelo office was fully staffed with 12 forecast meteorologists. There were no vacancies. The San Antonio office was operating with 11 forecasters. And as Brian said, the union themselves said that there was adequate staffing. So I think those words speak for themselves, and the numbers speak for themselves. This was a once-in-a-century flash flood, a tragic natural disaster, and the administration is doing all that we can on the ground to help these families during this time of need.
There you go. So it was a once-in-a-lifetime flood, and I mean, it was just one of those freak accidents. And I mean, like we talked about yesterday, it's force majeure. It's an act of God. There's nothing that anybody down here could have done to prevent it. Flash floods happen, rainstorms happen, and unfortunately, tragedies happen. And I mean, this is just another case of it. Well, even CNN is saying that, well, you know, maybe one of the reasons why this happened is that we're getting a little bit of warning fatigue. And Brian Stelter, which, if you don't know who that is, let me show you a picture of this goober. He's really, oh, yeah, that's him. That's him, Brian Stelter. All right, get him off the screen. He's horrible. But CNN, he's even admitting that, well, you know, maybe the media has something to do with this. From the Blaze, and I quote, "The Texas flooding tragedy that has claimed so many lives has also become a battleground for partisans attempting to place blame on their opponents for the catastrophe. Many critics on the left are trying to blame the cuts to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration made by the Trump administration for the deaths of at least 95 people in the disastrous flooding. 27 of the deaths were counted among campers and counselors at Camp Mystic. Quote, when everything is labeled extreme weather, nothing seems to be extreme anymore. White House Press Secretary Karen Leavitt forcefully denied the allegations during Monday's media briefing. That's the one that I just played for you. Quote, President Trump swiftly signed a major disaster declaration for Kerr County, Texas, to ensure our heroic first responders have every resource they need in relief and recovery. And so here's... all right, just quote. Unfortunately, in the wake of this once-in-a-generation natural disaster, we've seen many falsehoods pushed by Democrats such as Chuck Schumer and some members of the media. She said, blaming President Trump for these floods is a depraved lie, and it serves no purpose during a time of national mourning. Now, Brian Stelter cited reporting from CNN that warnings were sent out ahead of the flooding, but the question was whether those warnings reached who they needed to reach. He went on to say that warning fatigue was being cited by more experts as one of the causes of the disaster. Quote, when everything is labeled extreme weather, nothing seems to be extreme anymore, Stelter explained. And I couldn't agree more. I think that if you're going to label everything as an extreme weather event, then you're just going to continually mislead people. And it's just going to be, oh, it's just another one of those alerts. And they just silence their phone and they just go on, and then nobody reacts and nobody tries to take any precautions whatsoever. So when you have the radicals at CNN even admitting that, yeah, people were warned, yes, the warnings went out, and really it's just maybe the media played some role in this. I think it's a moment of honesty. You know, even radical Democrats can be honest every once in a while. And by the way, just to give you an update, we're still trying to connect with Mr. Kaufman. And if we're able to work it out, we'll get him on the program. And if not, well, then we'll figure out another way to get him on, maybe on tomorrow's program. But we're still working. So anyway, back to these floods, Brian Stelter and the media. When you have the constant drumbeat of tragedy and extreme this and extreme that. And it's another example of this. If you watch Fox News, everything on Fox News is a news alert. Even if it doesn't really matter, whatever comes up, you'll see the little thing flash across the screen, news alert. Or Hannity is really famous for the special edition of Hannity. Well, evidently every episode of Hannity is special because he has that thing up there every single time. So the media, I think, has some, culpability in this. I'm not saying they're to blame for the flood, but, I mean, really, when everything is extreme, when you label everything extreme, then nothing becomes, important any longer.
It's funny you mentioned that, and that's one of the reasons, everybody likes to say awesome. Oh, that's awesome. And I like to check them because they'll say that And if you use that word all the time, it doesn't mean anything anymore. And then when you go to talk about God, who truly is awesome, you got nothing left.
Exactly
Just
right.
an aside.
Exactly right. Well, I think that we may have just gotten Mr. Kaufman on the line. So let's go ahead and welcome into the program. Welcome to the show, Joe. How's it going? Can you hear me, Joe? Okay, evidently we're still having some connection problems. Joe, if you can hear me, I'll go ahead and get with you after the program, and we'll get another time scheduled, and we can and get all the bugs worked out of it. You know, it's live radio, and everything's on the internet, so something happened here. But I'll go ahead and get with Mr. Kaufman's people, and we'll get him back on the show just as soon as we possibly can. Again, my apologies that we could. Oh, there he is. He made it. How's it going?
I don't know. It kept on saying connecting, and then I don't know. Anyway,
that's all right. So why don't you tell my listeners about yourself?
So I'm running for U.S. Congress. Can you see me on the camera?
We cannot. Let's see here. Let me move some stuff around, and maybe we can get it going.
I don't know why it's not.
Oh, there we go. There you are. Perfect.
Okay.
Oh, now it just turned off. There we go. Okay, don't touch anything.
Okay.
Perfect. All right. So, why don't you introduce yourself to my listeners?
So my name is Joe Kaufman. I'm running for U.S. Congress in Florida's 23rd district. I had run in 2024, and it was the closest race in all of Florida. I had received 48% of the votes against my Democratic opponent, Jared Moskowitz. I went through a long, I was the last person to get into my primary. I got in very late last time around in March of 2024. There was a 6-person primary. I won with very big numbers. I almost doubled the vote of the mayor of Palm Beach County, and we came very close to winning the whole thing. And unfortunately, we had won early voting. We won election day in both counties, Broward County and Palm Beach County. This is a South Florida seat, and unfortunately, we were down by over 40,000 votes, like 44,000 votes with the mail-in ballots. And it's unfortunate that we still have these mail-in ballots.
Right.
I don't see wearing masks for COVID anymore. If that was the excuse to have mail-in ballots in the first place, it's not there anymore. We used to have something called absentee ballots where people had to give an excuse to, if they were elderly and they couldn't make it to or they were injured or they were out of town. But this way, some college student can, who has the voting booth a block away from his house, can't vote except by mail-in ballot. So it doesn't make sense. But anyway, we were the closest race, and I'm doing it again to win.
Excellent. Well, we've got a similar problem in Wyoming, and I mean, we don't have mail-in ballots here, but we do have a university, and we've been working really hard to get voter ID, and to make sure that. And you may have saw that Wyoming is the first state to pass a law that you have to prove that you're a resident of the state to vote. So. We've been working hard at that too.
Right. And my background is in counterterrorism and national security. And I think at what we had sent you, I don't know, but it was big for me over here. And I think for the community, last year, apart from running for office, I led the successful shutdown of a pro-Hamas conference that was to take place in Coral Springs, Florida. It was supposed to take place at the Coral Springs Marriott, and I had met with I brought a delegation of leaders from the Jewish community and the Hindu community, actually, both of which care about this radical Muslim issue, and we met with the general manager. I created a 30-page PowerPoint presentation to show to him. We went over every slide from the PowerPoint, and it took over an hour. He gave us over an hour with him, and by the end, he said, we had a legitimate cause, and it was overwhelming, the evidence against it. Yet they had speakers coming who were glorifying Hamas, the militants and the kidnappers after October 7th. It was outrageous, and the organization itself had different ties to terror-associated groups. So it was, for us, it was a no-brainer to shut this down. But when you do that, the other side, of course, is not happy with you.
Right.
And we had this group, the South Florida Muslim Federation. They were the organizers of the event. That includes the group CARE. You've probably heard of the group CARE, the Hamas link group, which I'm proud to say I've been a thorn in their side for many decades. And they sued me. They sued my nonprofit organization. They sued a number of others, including the Marriott and the Marriott Corporation. And I want to announce to your audience, I'm very proud to say that we just won in court.
Awesome. Good job.
The entire case was dismissed. Thanks.
Excellent. Well, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, Joe, is that I think that, and I think that any reasonable person knows this, that illegal immigration isn't just a border state problem. It's not just a problem in Florida or in Texas or in New Mexico. Every state has has an illegal immigration problem. But it's not just people that have just crossed the border because they want to, make extra money here. There were, and you can correct me if I get the number wrong, but the number I saw, that there were 700 Iranian nationals that were let into the country. And largely, we pretty much don't know who they are or where they are. So a question for you is, what's the actual threat look like in your estimation? I mean, where are we at with terrorism, the possibility of an attack? I mean, give it to me straight. Where are we at?
Well, look, during the Biden administration, there were a number of Hezbollahs who had crossed the border. It was in at one point, I think it was like 14, 15 individuals. One individual they caught, he was a bomb maker from Hezbollah. He was headed for New York, and I'm sure for not so good reasons. So no doubt, during the Biden administration and before then, there were terror-related individuals crossing our border, and that's only the people that we knew of, right? That we caught, but who knows how many hundreds, or God forbid 1,000. Who knows how many people have actually gotten into our country and are in our country right now. All of the past administrations have admitted that of terrorist cells setting up shop inside the United States. So the threat is significant, especially for the fact that we've been involved in the war. Israel certainly did the heavy lifting for the most part with regards to taking down a lot of these proxies and going after Iran itself. But we've supported Israel, and we got involved with the nuclear facilities in the end, and I would say rightfully so. I hear these naysayers out there in our own party, where they say that we shouldn't get involved in anything overseas, that we should focus only on America. But in truth, I don't know how many people are okay with Iran having a nuclear bomb. That doesn't just threaten Israel. Certainly, Israel's right in the neighborhood. But we saw on 9/11 what happens overseas can easily affect us here at home, and in a very big way. They took down the worldwide financial center, the Twin Towers, the World Trade Center. And so for Iran to get a nuclear bomb, it would be a disaster certainly a disaster for Israel,
for everybody.
But a disaster for the entire free world. And God forbid we ever wound up with a bomb crossing our shores. And hey, with technology today, I think that could easily happen. with drone technology and missile technology. So I believe the threat is huge, and I don't know if we told you, but I've been very involved with the Iranian opposition. I've been involved with the Iranian opposition for the past 17 years. I could tell you, I'm not going to name names, but I can tell you that my campaign manager and I, less than a year ago, we brought the Israeli government together with the Iranian opposition. We fed them bombing coordinates actually, and we brought them into communication with the Syrian rebels. I was in the room when the Israelis first spoke to the Syrian rebels. This was exactly 1 week before those same rebels had taken down Aleppo, and just days later, the entire Assad government. And again, I'm very proud of all that I witnessed and was involved in. These rebels weren't friends. They were Al Qaeda and ISIS type. They are Al Qaeda and ISIS type, but they said they didn't want war with Israel. They said the only thing that they wanted from Israel was to stand down when they took down the Assad government. And I had said to the Israeli intelligence officer that we had met with, I told him, I said, I know these aren't friends, and Assad had over 10 years ago taken down these same groups, but wouldn't it be great if our enemies were killing our enemies, and we didn't have to do anything with regards to it? And that's what they were asking. They were asking for Israel just to stand down. And you saw, and reports will show, at the time when the whole thing was over and the smoke cleared, the Israelis went in there and targeted 1,000 sites and blew up 1,000 sites. And it was because when the Syrians had asked the Israelis to stand down, the Israelis in turn asked them to stand down, and the Syrians couldn't have been happy with the fact that Israel was blowing up all of Assad's ammunition sites and military and government sites. But in truth, if you look back in time, they didn't say one word against it.
Right.
So it took place exactly how we were told it was going to. And then they told us that they didn't just want to go after Assad, that they wanted to go after Hezbollah and ultimately the Ayatollah, because the Iranians and Hezbollah were helping the Assad government go after them, years ago.
No, I
And
think
so
that it's, go ahead. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I was going to say that it took place just over a month ago. Again, you can look at reports. These same Syrians, they initiated a war or a battle with Hezbollah on the Syrian-Lebanon border, and I believe that they are going to be involved with regards to Iran as well. And hopefully, ultimately, I believe the Iranian people are going to come out and take down this government, because really the government is teetering on collapse. There's a lot of individuals within the IRGC and the Iranian military infrastructure who have already defected and announced their defection, at least to the Crown Prince, His Majesty Reza Pahlavi, who I got his endorsement. I want to.
That's cool. That's one of the reasons. The other reasons I wanted to talk to you. But continue.
And our people as well. They've so we know that on the ground over there's been a lot of defections, and there's chaos going on in Iran. And ultimately, I believe, I have no doubt, very soon the Ayatollah regime is going to fall, and there is going to be a friendly regime, hopefully headed by Pahlavi. But if not Pahlavi, then somebody that's like-minded and close to him. And and I believe that there's going to be Abraham Accords throughout the Middle East after that takes place, and there's finally going to be peaceful relations between the different countries in the Middle East. I don't know that it's going to be perfect, but for now, I believe there's going to be peace with a lot of countries, including Israel.
I think that would be a blessing. But I wanted to ask you, Joe, and I'm probably the only media outlet in Wyoming, definitely, that's been really covering this. But during the Obama administration, we saw a huge uprising in Iran with the Green Revolution. And just from an outsider, it seemed to me like, well, if Obama had said, hey, the U.S. supports what you're doing, I think that revolution, it could have possibly had a chance. Now, with the current events, Israel bombing Iran, what we did with their nuclear sites, at least from the outside, from media reports, it doesn't look like there's the same type of uprising in the street. And I wanted to ask you, one, is that true? And two, I mean, is it just a matter of the Ayatollah's regime, engaging in a campaign of just outright oppression? Or, I mean, what's the situation there?
First of all, let me mention with regards to the Obama administration, it's true. The people came out into the streets in droves, and they were begging President Obama just to say something.
Yes.
They weren't asking for arms. They weren't asking for anything except for him to say that he was with them, just like he did, by the way, to the Arab Spring when they were taking down Hosni Mubarak, the peace partner to Israel and the United States, but he refused. Just like I was with 1,000 Venezuelan Americans. We went to the White House to call for sanctions on the Maduro regime, and we were outside the White House, and the president basically forced the President Obama at the time to say something about it, because there was such a large group of individuals out there, and he said he didn't want sanctions. He wanted negotiations. He with Iran, he didn't want anything against the Iranian government, just to have an Iranian deal. But now, when the Israeli government has done so much damage to Iran and the U.S. government as well, to those 3 nuclear sites, it's frustrating to see that over 90% of the work is done, and the population hasn't been coming out into the streets. I know it's a threat to their lives to do so. We know that the Iran regime has placed Iranian police officers and others at several corners, in the streets across Iran, to find people that they consider against the regime. They've been imprisoning people. They've been killing some people as well. They imprisoned hundreds of Jewish leaders in the Jewish community in Iran, and there is actually a Jewish community.
That's surprising. I didn't know that.
They may have imprisoned 1,000 Jews, and they put to death a few already. They've accused them of being spies for the Mossad. These are not exactly individuals that have proclaimed allegiance with Israel in the past. They haven't. They would be annihilated if they did. But they're taking in. They're trying to. I guess Iran's trying to send a message, or a very cruel message, to Israel and the world, that they blame Jews for what happened. But unfortunately, the Iranian people haven't come out like they did during the Obama administration. But I believe ultimately they're going to. I've been told over and over again that they're going to, but I haven't seen it for years. And now that so much has been done, and the Ayatollah's in hiding in his own rat hole, evidently a rat hole with a video camera.
Rat hole with a view.
Podcast. but I think ultimately they're going to come out, and I have no doubt. Look, after October 7th, I'll tell you the first thing that I thought of when I saw October 7th, because for years, Israel, I said in a speech that I gave recently, Israel, Israel, when they're faced with annihilation, and nuclear weapons certainly is annihilation, Israel has taken action with regards to the Osiris nuclear reactor in 1981. Israel blew it up, and by the way, against the Reagan administration's wishes, and the Reagan administration punished them by not sending some jets to Israel. Ultimately, I think the U.S. government and most of the officials have appreciated that Israel did that and took out the nuclear reactor without much fallout from that situation. I don't mean nuclear fallout. I mean anything happening after that.
Repercussions or anything.
Repercussions in 2007, Israel took out the Syrian nuclear reactor that Iran was building, but for some reason Israel wasn't going after the Iranian nukes, and I couldn't understand why, because I understand, when President Bush was in office, he told, the Israelis said that their intention was to go over there. This is reported, and the Bush administration, President Bush, told them to back off, and they did. Certainly, the Obama administration wasn't having anything to do with going after Iran, but I couldn't understand why Israel didn't do it anyway. And after October 7th, when October 7th happened, and I have to tell you, I have family over there. My wife has family over there. It was the first thing that came to my mind was Iran. Not that Iran was involved, although certainly they were involved on some level, financing.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's their money or their rockets or something. Anytime something happens over there, they're involved.
Absolutely. And Hamas wasn't firing thousands of rockets into Israel, from nothing, because 2 years before that they had the capability of firing hundreds of missiles, and all of a sudden it was thousands of missiles within minutes.
Right.
And I said to my wife one word, and I said to her, Iran, and I believed that it was going to end with the fall of the regime, because I put two and two together. If Israel is getting hit by thousands of rockets by Hamas, and Hamas overwhelmed Israel's air defense system, which it did, then Hamas obviously has to be taken out. They need to be destroyed.
Yes.
I don't say that lightly, but you can't live next to a group that's going to threaten you in this way. The suicide attacks and the car rammings and the stabbings and all of that stuff was nothing compared to what they did on October 7th. And if Hamas had that capability, then certainly Hezbollah, with their arsenal of missiles, would have 10 times the capability, and they would need to as well be dismantled, destroyed, and ultimately, Iran, especially with the fact that they were actively looking to build nuclear weapons, needed the same. The regime had to fall, and I believe that all of that time when I was thinking that Israel wasn't doing anything, finally I understood. October 7th happened, and it was going to take place, and it is taking place before our eyes. And I believe very soon the Middle East is going to have peace, and the world isn't going to have to worry so much about bloodshed taking place over there.
Well, we can only pray for that, Joe. I mean, I'm absolutely with you on that. So let's talk about Florida for a minute. You guys have what I consider to be a pretty cool governor. We do not have a very cool governor. In fact, they're kind of the opposite. So I guess a couple of questions here. One, what do you think of Governor DeSantis? And two, talk to me about the alligator Alcatraz. I mean, I think it's a fantastic idea. We don't have alligators, but we do have rattlesnakes. Maybe we could do something with those. But talk to me about it.
Listen, well, first of all, with regards to Governor DeSantis, I think he has done a great job. He uh, he wasn't right for president at the time,
No.
but he's done great as governor of Florida when he needed to. He's put his foot down, and with regards to anything important. One thing I appreciate with him, some years back in 2018, my wife and we were invited to the Trump White House to advocate for school vouchers, education scholarships, school choice. And we met with all of the officials. And then we were broken up into groups, and we were told to, my wife and I, to go meet with then Congressman Ron DeSantis. And we went, there was a half dozen of us. We sat in front of him. I've got pictures of it, and it's all on my campaign cards.
I've got photographic proof of it. I did meet the guy.
Yeah, I told my wife when we were sitting there, and I was the spokesman for the group. I said to my wife, you got to get up and take this photo, because I didn't know that he was going to become governor or anything like that. But I figured maybe one day this is going to be important, and it was. And I said to him, listen, Congressman, we're part of the faith community, and it's very important for us. It's not choice. It's not school choice for us. For us, it's mandatory to send our kids to get religious education, and it costs a lot of money. And he had his big cowboy boots on, his arms crossed, and he was there as cool as a cucumber. And he said, "How much does it cost?" And I turned to my wife Emily. I said, "Emily, how much does it cost?" And she said, "It cost us $16,000." And now it's a lot more. And even that was a low number at the time. And he went back on his chair. I think his kids were infants at the time, and he didn't have to deal with private schools. And he said, "Wow, that is expensive." And that same year he became governor, and he passed one of the largest school choice bills in the country, something I don't think they have in Wyoming. Correct me if
Well,
I'm
actually, this past legislative session, they did pass a school choice bill. The problem with it is they added universal pre-K to it. And so, if it hadn't been for that little, I would call it a poison pill, but I mean, I guess others may say, well, we added that to get it passed. But had it not had that component with it, I think it would have been a halfway decent bill. Right now, it's tied up in court, and it's like every good idea that conservatives have. You have to go through court before you go through anything. But yeah, I mean, we're working on it.
It's one thing that I'd like to see is a federal school choice bill. I see the benefits of it in moving kids from failing schools, because it's not just for kids that whose parents want them to have religious education. Kids who are in failing schools can have the choice to move into something that's not. But it's also putting pressure on the public schools, causing competition for them, and it's made them perform better, and they do. In the state of Florida, there have been studies, and I think beyond Florida, there have been studies where it shows the public schools are benefiting in that way. Yes, some are being shut down. They're not performing well, and they shouldn't be around. But the ones that are around, they're performing better because of the competition. And and you mentioned the alligator. I think it's important. Look, you only have so much room for these individuals, and unfortunately, under the Biden administration, he lets so many individuals into our country. It's forced the Trump administration to start clearing house, and I'm very thankful for that. It helps our economy. It helps our workforce. I believe, and I think it's necessary. You can't have a sovereign country being invaded like this and not take the necessary steps to stop it. So I look in California, I see all those protesters, and I don't understand their mindset. This is it's their country as well. I think at least it's the protesters' country, and they should want this country to do better as well, regardless of where their political leanings lie. So I think I'm in favor of it, and I think it was something that was necessary.
Absolutely. And, it's, I think you said it best, that you can't have a country unless you have borders. And certainly your state, you're in a very different position than Wyoming. I mean, Wyoming's landlocked, though, just about every Tuesday when I open up the newspaper, there's some illegal immigrant that was arrested for something, usually like driving without a license or drunk in public or something like that. But the truth is that every state, I don't care which one it is, we all have an illegal immigration problem. And, your question as to, you hope that the protesters are citizens. Well, many of them aren't. And I think it's a pretty sad commentary that we don't know if they are or not. Any other country on the face of the planet, if you're caught being in their country illegally, you're either deported or they throw you in prison. And I mean, it's not a question. And apparently here, because of what the Democrat Party has done to our immigration system, and because of, leftist activists, now there's this big question. Well, if you're an illegal immigrant, are you really a criminal? I mean, I don't know. You broke a law, so by definition, you're a criminal.
And I believe it's a serious crime to do so.
Absolutely,
and,
it is.
And it's why I had received the endorsement of Tom Homan for my campaign, because he understands my background in security and how I would be effective with regards to the borders. But I'll tell you, my wife Emily, she grew up in Peru. She lived in Israel for a number of years. But at some point in her life, she wanted to become an American citizen, and she came here, and and it took years, and she took the necessary steps, and the job that she was in, her sponsor, and thank God for the sponsor, but they didn't pay her a lot of money.
Right.
And all of that money basically went to the hands of an immigration attorney. She had very little to live off of, enough to pay her rent and food, but she did it because she wanted to become an American, and I was there when she was sworn in, and we were all very proud of her. And my great grandparents, when they came to this country, they came to escape the horrors of Europe and the Nazis, and they also spent years doing it. But they all, whether it was my wife or my great grandparents or so many others, they did it the right way.
Yes.
They try to come here to cross the borders to get something for free. They understood that to become an American and have the freedoms that we're afforded here in America, they had to work for those freedoms. Those freedoms are not free.
No.
And people are mistaken if they think that they come here and they're automatically given everything for free. It's not the case. You have to work hard for that. And they did, and I'm proud of all of them for doing that. And my wife is offended when she sees people crossing the borders, because she had to work so hard to get it. And here you have illegals getting benefits from the United States. And I'm glad about the big beautiful bill that they're
right.
that they're going after some of that, a lot of that, and I'm all in favor of it.
All right. Well, Joe, we're just about out of time. I really appreciate you taking the time to visit with me, and I'll make sure that you guys get a copy of this video. I think we had a great discussion. If my listeners or your constituents want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
They can go on our website. It's kaufmanforcongress.com. Kaufman, one F, one N.
Excellent. Well,
and please donate.
All right. Well, of course. Make sure the guys got some cash to campaign. Well, Joe, I appreciate you taking the time, and good luck, my friend.
Thank you so much. Be well. It's a pleasure.
Thanks. All right. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll wrap up the show.
Everybody say, hey, that's not the way, rock's
spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listened to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. This program is only going to continue to expand. It's already expanding. Number 32 on the list of the 100 conservative podcasts you should be listening to in 2025. Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson wrapping up today's program of Cowboy State Politics, and just a couple of thoughts before we hang it up for today. Ken, let's get your thoughts on on Mr. Kaufman. I thought that was incredibly interesting. I thought he was pretty insightful when it comes to terrorism, illegal immigration, the whole ball of wax.
I wish we had a little bit more time. I did think it was very interesting, his knowledge of Iran and the things that are going on over there. I would like to have been able to talk to him about our own vulnerabilities here. And, we were talking earlier about the infrastructure that we have, and it would have been fun. So maybe sometime we might drag him back and see what recommendations, how he would answer the ideas of what do we do to take care of our own infrastructure? How do we wake up?
Well, and I think that's a critical question to answer right there. And, in the past legislative session, you guys had a bill about not allowing foreign ownership next to military bases. I mean, that seems to be a no-brainer to me. And, how we ever got to the point of saying, it's probably okay that China owns ground right next to F.E. Warren Air Force Base. I mean, that's just idiotic if you ask me. But, that's how complacent that we have become. And there are people in the Wyoming legislature that voted against that. And most of them claim to be Republican, which is, another shocking twist to it.
Well, it's an interesting argument, because if I'm also very pro private rights. If I own property, I ought to be able to sell it to whomever I please.
Right.
But that creates a serious problem if I have ill will towards the United States. It also creates another problem that is similarly related. But let's say a group of investors out in California said, man, they're paying a lot of money to store nuclear waste. Why don't we buy this property, have that contract? It won't bother us. We're sitting here in California or in Hawaii or wherever else they're at, and we're stuck here with it. So there's that really critical intersection between private property rights and the rights of the people around you, the harm's principle comes into play.
Yeah, absolutely does.
But man, it created a pretty strong debate on the floor.
And it's, you know, it was one of those bills that I thought it was kind of a no-brainer, right? Why would any red-blooded, you know, Wyoming citizen, gun-toting, you know, cowboy really even think twice about this? And then the debate on the floor was pretty intense. And, you know, and this is the way that I look at it. You know, if you are not, you know, on the terror watch list, or if you're not one of America's adversaries, I don't see that there's a problem. I'm a free market guy. Think that private property rights, it was going to be mentioned, you know, life, liberty, and property in the Constitution. And so I don't see any problem with that. But if you are an enemy to this country, and if you're one of these folks that shows up on the terror watch list, we restrict your behavior to a whole bunch of different things. You're probably not even going to be able to get on an airplane. I mean, that was a pretty smart move, restricting that ability. But there's a whole bunch of different things that you can't do. And owning property, next to a military base, for sure, that seems to be pretty easy.
Not just a military base, but sensitive infrastructure. Well, how do you define that? You know, that's
the substation we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, and you got to look at it though and say, at what point does selling your property to an identified enemy of the nation make you one?
There you go.
You know,
and it's the same
to
thing.
me, it was pretty cut and dried. But.
Yeah, I mean, it's so I was watching Fox News last night, and Jessica Tarlov was on, and she refused to admit that crossing the border illegally was a crime. I mean, she went right up to the line and said, well, but I'm not going to say that that's a crime. It's in the statutes. It's in the U.S. Code. I mean, it's
2 plus 2 is 4, not 5 if you want it to be 5. And this is not to be discriminatory. This is to stand up for language. Words mean things.
Exactly right. And it's, you know, we are living in a weird place where we're obviously not paying attention to the law, and it's going to be to our detriment. So that pretty much wraps up today's busy broadcast 2 hours. Tomorrow on the program, we're going to have an interview with U.S. Representative Harriet Hageman, our monthly chat. We talk about the big, beautiful bill, the roadless rule, and briefly mentioned all those NFA items. So we'll do that tomorrow. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. We'll see you tomorrow, my friends.